Usually, when you think of safety, you think of solid ground.
Right. Definitely.
You think of thick walls, concrete foundations, deadbolts on doors, basically everything perfectly stable and unchanging.
Yeah, things that don't move.
Exactly. But today we're doing a deep dive into a document that completely flips that idea on its head. It's called Series 3, What a DSL Can Learn from a High-Wire Artist.
Such an incredible piece of writing.
It really is. And, for those of you listening who might not be in the education space, a DSL is a designated safeguarding lead. That's the person in a school whose absolute ultimate responsibility is the safety and well-being of the students.
And it is, without a doubt, one of the most demanding, high-stakes roles in literally any educational environment. Because, the stakes aren't profit margins or quarterly goals here.
Right, the stakes are child safety.
Exactly. It's life or death in some cases.
Yeah. So our mission for this deep dive is to explore how the intense, deeply physical world of a high-wire acrobat provides this brilliant, almost startling framework for understanding the daily psychological reality of a DSL.
It's a very visceral comparison.
Okay, let's unpack this because
Yeah.
the core visual we're working with here is just so vivid. Picture an acrobat stepping out onto the tightrope. From the ground, looking up, they look perfectly calm.
Yeah, completely serene.
Right, every movement is controlled. To the audience, who is basically breathing this collective sigh of relief, it looks completely effortless.
But that effortlessness is a total illusion. The reality up on the wire is completely different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Behind that calm exterior is just relentless, grueling work. There's this constant hyper-awareness of risk. The acrobat is making tiny, invisible micro-adjustments every single second just to stay upright.
Yeah, and the hook from the text that really stood out is that balance is not a talent.
Oh, right.
It is an active discipline that has to be maintained continuously.
Which really made me wonder, how does that incredibly physical reality of walking a thin wire translate to the emotional and professional balance of someone running a school's safeguarding program?
Well, what's fascinating here is that we often use the word balance as if it were a destination. We say, I finally found my work-life balance.
We're like, I've balanced the budget.
Exactly. It implies you put a weight on a scale, it levels out, and you just walk away.
Right. Job done.
But that's entirely the wrong way to look at it.
Yeah.
Balance is an active, ongoing process. On the high wire, if you lock up and try to hold one perfectly static position, you will fall.
Wow.
You have to continuously adjust to the sway of the wire, the movement of your own body, the air currents. And for a DSL, that translates directly to how they manage their daily interactions and the competing priorities constantly pulling at them.
Right, because they aren't seeking a static state. They're constantly weighing those priorities in real time. So what does that actually look like in a school hallway?
It looks like walking a tightrope between four major tensions. First, balancing care with challenge. You have to care deeply for a student who is struggling.
But you also have to challenge their harmful behaviors. Like, you can't let them get away with bullying just because they have a tough home life.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You can't let empathy erase accountability. Second is listening versus acting. Imagine a child is disclosing something really difficult to you in your office.
Right.
You have to know exactly when to just sit back and absorb what they're saying so they feel heard, and when to immediately pick up the phone to call Child Protective Services.
Oh, that's such a fine line. And then there's trust versus professional distance, right?
Exactly. You desperately need that student to trust you enough to tell you what's going on, but you cannot become their friend. You have to maintain professional boundaries, or you lose the objectivity required to actually keep them safe.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
And finally, the most difficult one is urgency versus precision.
Man, that last one sounds incredibly stressful. Urgency and precision. It's like being told, hurry up, but whatever you do, don't make a single mistake.
That is exactly the tension. Imagine a scenario where a student shows up with an unexplained bruise.
Okay.
If you act too urgently without gathering enough information, you might trigger an investigation that causes immense, unjustified trauma to an innocent family.
Oh, wow.
But if you act too slowly, endlessly, trying to be perfectly precise and gather every single fact, you might be sending a child back to a dangerous home.
It makes me think of driving on the highway. Even on a perfectly straight road, you aren't just locking your hands in place on the steering wheel. You are making constant, almost unconscious micro-corrections to stay in the lane.
Yeah.
The moment you lock your arms, you drift into the next lane.
That's a perfect parallel. The moment a DSL stops adjusting, they drift into danger. You don't find a perfect, comfortable position and stay there. You shift your weight, millimeter by millimeter, based on the specific kid, the specific day, and the specific crisis.
Which brings us to a really interesting debate. Because if this balance requires constant active adjustment, how does a person actually sustain that day in and day out without completely burning out?
That is the million-dollar question.
I want to play devil's advocate for a second here. Doesn't effective safeguarding just come down to having a massive heart? Like, you hire people with incredible empathy, people who have a good gut feeling and a natural instinct for reading kids.
It's a common assumption.
Right. If you make it too much about rigid procedure, don't you lose the human element?
Well, it is incredibly tempting to rely on a good gut feeling. And empathy is absolutely what gets someone into this profession to begin with. But if we look back at the high-wire artist, they don't survive a 100-foot drop because they're naturally gifted at walking on ropes.
Or because they have a passion for heights.
Exactly. They survive because of relentless routine, because of repetition, because they practiced for thousands of hours before they ever stepped out over a crowd. Discipline outweighs natural ability every time.
But wait, kids aren't ropes. You can't just apply a rigid flowchart to human trauma.
You aren't applying a flowchart to the child. You're applying it to the professional.
Oh, wow.
Empathy is the fuel, but discipline is the engine. Safeguarding excellence is built through discipline, not instinct. It depends on consistent practice, strong habits, and highly reliable systems.
Because I guess if you rely solely on natural empathy.
Exactly. What happens on a Friday afternoon when that DSL is running on 3 hours of sleep? What happens when their gut feeling is clouded by a personal bias about a particular family?
So the discipline protects the child from the adult's bad day.
Precisely. Discipline means you follow the procedures consistently, regardless of how you are feeling. Your baseline of safety does not fluctuate with your mood. Empathy is necessary, but as a safety mechanism, it's far too fragile to carry the weight of a whole school.
And I suppose that brings us to the ultimate backup plan. Because even the most disciplined acrobat, the person who has practiced 10,000 hours and has ice in their veins, they still use a safety net.
They absolutely do. Think about the nature of a safety net at the circus. The audience honestly forgets it's even there because it's rarely used.
Right. You're looking at the performer.
But the moment the artist loses their balance, it is the only thing preventing a catastrophic outcome. In a school setting, the safety nets aren't made of nylon ropes. They are clear policies.
Right.
They are rigid reporting systems. They are defined, unskippable escalation pathways.
So an escalation pathway, that's the literal map of, like, if a teacher sees X, they immediately tell Y, who is then legally obligated to contact Z.
Exactly. It completely removes the guesswork when panic sets in. When a crisis hits, people's cognitive load maxes out, they get scared, they freeze.
Yeah, nobody thinks perfectly clearly in an emergency.
Right, so the escalation pathway is a safety net because you just fall back onto the system. The critical takeaway from the text here is that you build these systems desperately hoping you never actually need to use them.
But a safeguarding program without that net is simply not safe.
No matter how talented the DSL is.
Okay, so what does this all mean for the daily reality of the job? We know they need discipline, and we know they need the net. But even with a net, falling hurts.
It does.
When we look at why these artists or these safeguarding leads actually slip in the first place, what causes the drop? On the wire, I imagine it's one moment of distraction. A bird flies past, a light flares in your eyes, or your foot just cramps.
This is where human fallibility enters the equation. It rarely comes down to a massive, dramatic failure of morals. It's usually much quieter. The two primary dangers we see are inattention and overconfidence.
Let's look at inattention first.
Well, on the wire, as you said, it's a momentary lapse. In safeguarding, inattention manifests as missed signals.
Like what? What does a missed signal look like in the chaos of a school day?
It's the student wearing a thick, long-sleeve sweater in the middle of a sweltering summer day, trying to hide something on their arms. Or it's a slight gradual change in an otherwise bubbly child's demeanor over the course of 2 weeks. When a DSL or a teacher is inattentive, they miss those breadcrumbs. And that leads to delayed responses.
Because you're dealing with hundreds, sometimes thousands of kids. It's so incredibly easy for that attention to fracture when you're also dealing with bus schedules and parent complaints and lunch duty.
It really is. Which
Yeah.
is why safeguarding requires sustained attention, not just occasional focus when there's an obvious screaming crisis. A DSL has to aggressively avoid complacency.
Right.
But then we get to an even more insidious risk, which is overconfidence.
Ah, the paradox of confidence. I love this part of the source material because it's so true to human nature. You absolutely need confidence to make those tough calls.
You do.
Like if you're timid, you can't look an angry parent in the eye or challenge a colleague who might be acting inappropriately. You need a spine. But at the same time, too much confidence is exactly what kills you.
Because overconfidence leads to casual risk-taking. It reduces your focus. A veteran teacher or an experienced DSL might start thinking, I've handled 100 cases just like this.
Right, I know this family. I know exactly how this plays out. It's just a phase.
Yes, the assumption that because you've seen the pattern before, you don't need to look closely this time.
Wow, that is dangerous.
Extremely. The moment an artist thinks the wire is easy, they fall. In safeguarding, confidence is necessary, but it absolutely must be balanced with caution. It has to be tempered with constant vigilance and reflection.
So confidence without caution is a safeguarding risk in itself.
Exactly.
Wow. And it's not just internal factors causing the drop, is it? I mean, the artist isn't walking in a vacuum. They are battling the elements: wind, rain, the glare of the lighting, the actual physical tension of the wire itself.
Right, the environment.
How do those elements translate to a school?
The environment completely shapes the performance. In a school setting, the wind might be a sudden, severe cut to the school's funding, which just spikes anxiety everywhere.
Oh, sure.
The glare of the lighting could be a viral social media trend that is suddenly causing chaos in the classrooms and distracting everyone.
Right, something totally out of left field.
Exactly. And the tension of the wire is the capacity of the staff. Are the teachers overworked, burned out, and missing things?
So you could have the most disciplined, highly trained DSL in the world. But if they are operating in a toxic school culture where staff don't report small concerns,
Or where a principal sweeps controversies under the rug to protect the school's reputation?
then that DSL is walking a wire in a hurricane. Their personal skill cannot overcome a deeply flawed environment.
They're set up to fail.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because as brilliant and illuminating as this whole high wire metaphor is, our sources take a hard pivot. There's a section literally titled The Honest Bit, where the high wire analogy breaks down.
I love this section.
Me too, and I appreciate this so much because metaphors can only take us so far before they actually start obscuring the truth of a situation. Despite all these physical comparisons, safeguarding is absolutely not a solo performance.
This is a vital distinction, and it raises a really important question about how we view leadership in these roles. Think about the high wire artist again. They are engaging in an individual performance.
Right?
They rely entirely on their own physical balance. They're operating in a highly controlled, engineered setting. They know exactly how long the wire is, how high it is, what the exact tension is.
They've measured everything.
Everything. And most importantly, they are taking on personal risk. If they make a mistake, they fall. They hurt themselves.
It's entirely on them. But the DSL?
The DSL is operating in an entirely different paradigm. They are not putting on an individual performance. They are leading a team-based safeguarding effort. They aren't relying on physical balance. They're relying on professional judgment. They operate in a wildly dynamic, unpredictable environment where a new variable can walk through the door at 8 a.m. every single morning. And the most critical difference is that they are not taking on personal risk.
Right. They hold the responsibility for others. If the DSL loses their balance and makes a mistake, it is a child who falls.
That completely changes the weight of the job, which is why we have to be incredibly careful with this analogy. A DSL must never believe they are working without support.
They shouldn't try to be the lone hero on the wire, basically absorbing all the pressure themselves.
Exactly. And furthermore, a circus artist embraces risk for the thrill of the audience. In a school, risk must be aggressively managed, minimized, and mitigated, never embraced.
So how do you manage that at a systemic level? Because one person, no matter how disciplined, can't hold all that tension forever. We talked about the environment being the school culture, but how do you intentionally build an environment that supports the DSL?
You build it through what's called a pastoral system.
Okay, so for someone listening who is totally outside of the education world, what exactly is a pastoral system?
The pastoral system is essentially the school's entire infrastructure for student well-being. It's not about their academics, their math, their reading scores. It's the web of emotional, social, and psychological support.
Like the safety net of people.
Exactly. It's the homeroom teachers, the counselors, the behavioral policies, the anti-bullying initiatives. It's the whole architecture of care.
Got it. And our materials break down how to optimize that system into three areas: foundations, developmental pathways, and leadership.
Right. Let's look at the how of each. The foundations are your non-negotiables. How do you build them? You institute rock-solid, basic routines.
So everyone is on the same page.
Yes, it means every single staff member knows how to log a concern in the software system, and they do it consistently. It's the reliable support network that acts as the safety net.
And what about developmental pathways?
That's about growth. For staff, a developmental pathway means you don't just hand a new teacher a manual and say, well, good luck.
Right, figure it out.
Yeah, you provide ongoing training so they feel confident maintaining their own balance when a kid discloses trauma to them. For students, it means creating proactive support systems, like peer mentoring or mental health check-ins, so crazies are prevented before they ever require the DSL's intervention.
Oh, that's smart. You catch the kid before they ever get near the edge of the wire.
Exactly. And finally, leadership. This is all about accountability. How do leaders ensure that these high standards are maintained daily? It's not just about writing a good policy, it's about auditing it.
Testing the net.
Yes. It's about constantly asking, is our safeguarding system dependent on the heroic, exhausting efforts of one or two key individuals, or is it built on consistent, disciplined practice across the entire building?
It really all comes back to discipline over instinct.
It always does.
To wrap up the core takeaways for you, the listener, what we've seen from this deep dive is that high-wire artists, the ones who survive, the ones who make the impossible look effortless, they do not rely on luck. They rely on discipline, hyper-awareness, and relentless preparation.
Absolutely.
The crucial difference between safety and a devastating risk is often just one single moment of attention. Safeguarding demands that exact same discipline. Not occasional excellence when the pressure is on or when the cameras are rolling, but consistent, focused, deliberate practice on a rainy Tuesday in February.
And they do all of this with robust safety nets, firmly in place, for when balance is inevitably lost.
Yeah.
Because human beings are fallible, and balance will eventually be lost.
Right.
The goal isn't absolute perfection. The goal is a safe recovery.
Exactly. And the materials leave us with a brilliant question to carry forward, which I want to pose directly to you as you think about your own work, whether you're in a school, a hospital, or a corporate office. In my practice, am I relying on fleeting moments of intense focus, or am I maintaining the discipline required every single day?
Such a great question to reflect on. But I think there's one final provocative thought we have to consider to really round out this picture.
Oh, what's that?
Well, we've visualized the DSL walking the high wire, and we've visualized the policies and procedures acting as a safety net below. We've established that the DSL isn't a solo act, that this is a team effort shaped by the entire school culture.
Right.
But if that's true, we have to look to the ends of the wire. We must ask, who is inspecting and securing the wire before the DSL even steps onto it?
Oh, wow. The anchors.
Exactly. The anchors and the tension. How do the daily, seemingly unrelated actions of the wider staff change the very tension of the wire?
Right, because everything is connected.
Think about the teacher who decides not to log a minor behavioral incident because they're in a rush. Or think about the district administrator who pushes through a slightly flawed background check just to fill a staffing shortage quickly.
Or the front desk receptionist who brushes off an anxious parent instead of really listening to their concern.
Yes, every single one of those actions loosens the tension.
Wow.
The DSL might have perfect discipline. They might have perfect practiced balance. But if the culture of the building has allowed the wire itself to go slack through 1,000 tiny shortcuts, suddenly all that discipline and all those micro-adjustments might not be enough to keep them from falling.
It's not just about how you walk the wire, it's about who is holding the line.
Exactly.
Keep that in mind next time you step out into the unpredictable, messy realities of your own professional landscape. Keep finding your balance, keep checking those anchors, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.